Hi, this is Sarah from the Keepers at Home channel, back to you with another video. This topic today is a game changer. It's been so instrumental in my life, my finances, my marriage. It's called Contentment. But before we get into it, I want to tell you about my friend's ministry. It's called Canine Friends. It's a wonderful channel for children, and it teaches them about its educational content and Bible-based stories, and it's all from a biblical worldview. And it's super fun. My kids love it. They look forward to it every week. So without further ado, here's a trailer of their channel, and I'll be back.
Are you looking for unique children's programming teaching traditional Christian family values? Look no further than Canine Friends. Canine Friends focuses on a family of dogs learning to take ownership of their beliefs and their everyday walk with Jesus. Join Todd, Milo, and Bella as they go on many backyard adventures, tackling common questions of everyday morals and values.
See, Todd, this is what happens when you don't listen to Mom.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I just really wanted to do it on my own.
Our prayer is that your child will be transformed by biblical truths that are clearly presented in a fun and engaging way. Check out our website and YouTube channel and be sure to like and subscribe.
Welcome back. We're going to start today's video, and it's about contentment. It's something that can make or break your marriage, relationships, finances, your perspective. You could really have a good thing going for yourself, but if you're not content, it could ruin all of that. Okay, so we're going to begin with Hebrews 13:5-6. It says, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. These are promises from God. So one thing that will differentiate you from, if you're a single woman, from the rest of the women is having a content spirit. A guy can tell when he takes you even out on a date. If you go out on a date, you're courting, a guy can tell if you have a content spirit. Okay. Are you going to order the highest thing on the menu? Are you going to be content with what the man can provide? Some people want to push the envelope. I saw a video not too long ago about a woman who thought Cheesecake Factory was so beneath her, and she was disgusted that her date would even recommend to take her there. And for married women, the ways that can manifest is going on Facebook, looking at somebody's house, looking at their life, looking at their husband, how their husband provides. Oftentimes when you meet women, they will ask you, okay, what do you do and what does your husband do? Sometimes they're genuinely curious in what your husband does, and sometimes it's to compare. If you say your husband's a doctor, immediately they kind of will feel a certain way about what their husband is doing. They're always, they might be comparing, okay? And so when you compare, it alters the way you view your husband, and it could diminish the way you view your husband. In return, you could tend to lose respect for your husband. Okay, so if you're comparing houses, you see your friend has a beautiful house. And by the way, realtors are great at this. They really lean on the materialistic nature of women. Okay, they know women, if they could take them to a house with a nice kitchen, they could bump their budget up by $20,000-$30,000, possibly even more. They'll ask you what your range is, and they'll push beyond that range. The kitchen is nice, the bathroom is nice, they know what you like. So, interesting fact, if you look back in time, the square footage of the home started off huge because it was like a farmhouse. They had lots of kids, so it really made sense for them to have a 3,000 square foot house. Okay, and but as people left agriculture and they moved to within the suburbs or cities, their houses shrink. So a 1950s house was probably 1,100 square feet. Within the last 20, 30, 40 years, we have seen houses explode in square feet called McMansions. McMansions are huge. They're what they sound like. give the middle class a way to get a taste of affluent life and live in a mansion, essentially. As a result, the square footage of homes have grown larger and larger and larger. Now, most of the time, that is a woman oriented thing. Go back to when you first met your husband. Either he was roommates or he lived in a shack or a shanty house. We're keeping it real. He lived in something super, super small. So men could be very satisfied in small quarters. And what happens is women who are not as content, they want larger and larger quarters. And if a man loves you, he wants to please you. Okay. This is sometimes to a fault. Okay. So he wants to please you and he buys a home that's bigger than maybe something you could both afford. And so after that situation is done is where there's a buyer's regret. The man may look at you with resentment, even though he might have authorized it, he might have felt pressured or have his manliness put into question because of certain purchases, and he wants to appear like he has the ability to do it. Men don't like to tell you no. Your husband won't want to tell you no. So a wise man will still say, hey, this is not in our budget. We can't do this. We'll get a smaller house and you'll learn to love it. But that's very difficult for men to do. So they will concede, and then it's the resentment that they have to work X amount of hours every time they think that, they think about the house, the mortgage. They have to work extra hours. They have to be away from their children, away from you for longer periods of the day to provide this lifestyle for you. So as a wife, the best thing you could do is scale back your desires and be content with what you have. You have the budget, you should be involved in the budgeting process together, and you scale back. And every single time I go to the store, I think about my husband going to work. It's really a burdensome way to think about things, but it really helps me put everything into perspective. I think about him working hard, working overtime to provide the lifestyle that we have, that I can be a stay-at-home mother. But if somebody were to look at my home is a very modest home. If I wanted to have a larger home, I'd have to go to work. And unfortunately, many women make that decision to go to work because they want a nice house. My car is a 2007 Honda Odyssey, and not a lot of people would drive those kind of cars. They would be like, no, I want the newest, Lexus truck, etc. I mean, I could easily alter my lifestyle to have more of the things that I want. And oftentimes what I found is when I watch shows or I am on Facebook somewhere where I'm comparing myself to someone else, it does make me desire those things. So one of the shows that I used to watch, and I don't advise any Christian woman to watch it because there's so much immorality and perverseness in it, but I used to watch Real Housewives of Atlanta, and you see the women with the extravagant houses, you see them and you crave it. You start to really want that. You want the house, you want the car, you want the family. But in a couple seasons later, you find out that the house is repossessed, husband's going to jail for fraud because they too were in love with money and a lifestyle that they couldn't afford. So the lesson is to be content with what you have. A couple years back, I bought a Dodge. It was like the SUV Dodge. I forget, Charger or Challenger. I can't remember. No, Challenger was a sports car. I can't remember the name of this car, but anyway, I was in love with it. I thought, this is such a great idea. I could put my bike in the back. It was so roomy. It was my first new car that I purchased, and I was so excited about it. And the payment was absurd. Within like 2-3 months of that, with my rent on a teacher's salary, I started hating that car. I just wanted it to get stolen. Like maybe if I leave it in this neighborhood, it would get stolen and the insurance company would cut me a check. I was so desperate to get this car off my hands. And I told myself never again. During the 2008 housing crisis, I've seen so many. I lived in Miami, Florida. And so Florida was one of the big bubble areas where the real estate market imploded on itself. I seen people that I thought were rich, with the Bentleys and the expensive cars, repossession after repossession, foreclosure after foreclosure. And that was all due to lack of contentment. Okay. So you want to live within your means. You do not want to pressure your spouse to embark in the materialism and spending, because most of the time the spending weakness is on the women. They're more inclined to have credit card debt and just out of control spending. Also, and this is an area for me that looking back, I would tell my daughter, don't even do it. Just go to a technical college or something where you could get a skill and go to work. The student loans are, a lot of women are taking student loans because of lack of contentment. They think the degrees will afford them a more lavish lifestyle, and now they're so indebted. They're bringing debt to their marriage. They can't even be on a mortgage because their debt to income ratio is so poor. So these are things that you want to consider, sharing with your children. Also, for the women, I mean, we're in a society where the men are very weak. So sexuality and capitalizing on sexuality, OnlyFans, all kind of perverseness to make money. Sometimes sexual harassment on the job, it's quid pro quo. If you do this for me, you'll get this promotion. I mean, the vice president, not to disparage her, but it's a fact that she did what she needed to do with her supervisor to afford her promotion opportunities. So, and what does it gain a man or woman to gain the whole world and lose their soul? So, next is Timothy 6:6-8. It says, now there's a great gain in godliness with contentment, for we were brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. So that's the biggest travesty of it all. We see so many people sacrificing, compromising their morality, putting their family in debt. And once you get in debt, here's the trap of the devil. Once you get in debt, the number one reason for divorce is finances. So if you don't have that content spirit, it's like fast track to divorce. Finances, financial fights, financial infidelity, taking credit cards. The husband as well take credit cards without their wives knowing, and wives taking credit cards without their husbands. So this is a really big issue in America, the finances, and leading to divorce. So I would encourage you, that's the best gift you could give to your husband. Every husband wants a wife that they know that if anything happens, if they lost it all, that their wife would be content, and they would, of course, it puts you on the edge, and you have to really trust on God, but they know that their wife will be with them to rebuild, and they won't just run away when something goes wrong. Also, contentment on social media, lack of contentment could lead you to embarking in what the people feel are innocent conversations with others, and then you start comparing that person to your spouse and start feeling a certain way. We see this with work husbands, work wives. That's lack of contentment. If you are content with what you have, okay, then you know that when you compare on this fake stage with the people that project something that is not reality, you compare yourself to that, you give up security, love, family for something that is a risk. It is so high, number one. Number two, it's already based on mistrust. You would know not to even embark on that journey because you have such a strong contentment. So when you are content as a wife, your husband can trust that because you lean on God, that you're unmovable as far as falling into extramarital affairs and things like that. But when you're not feeling content, and once again, here's the thing about the Bible, contentment rests on, does not depend on how the man treats you. It doesn't depend on if he's a great husband. It doesn't depend on anything else but God. So the Bible, that's the tough thing about it. We're given mandates and it's not necessarily reciprocal. So I could be a super content wife, even to a defect. I don't spend money on myself at all. I don't, bother dressing fancy at all. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your husband will appreciate you in that moment. But what you're doing this for, you're doing it for God. You're not doing it for your husband. You're putting others above yourself. So sometimes this looks like you're going to spend money on your children before yourself. And women tend to be that way. They put others above themselves. But we have a new society which says, do for yourself, put yourself first, go out, have fun, don't worry about the kids later. You got to live your life. You got to do you. You only have one life to live. So there's all this pressure on putting yourself first. And in the end, everybody else gets put last. And you either become a very bitter or depressed person. That's another thing. Women are on antidepressants, psychotropic, anti-anxiety drugs like you wouldn't believe. And it's part of this whole cycle of not being content, falling into consumerism, falling into affairs, following to all these destructive behaviors that is not edifying to your marriage. So that is the main takeaway. And if you're a single woman, focus on contentment. Be content at where you are. I was at the point when I was single, I wasn't content with where I was. So I said, what do I have to do to be busy, to be exalted above others, So let me go out and get degrees. Let me do this so I could, I could earn more money and I could do more. And instead, all that ended up happening is I brought a lot of debt into my marriage. It negatively impacted my family. And yes, they say women are more educated and some of them are earning more than men. But with that comes the consumerism, it comes to student loans, and it's just a vicious cycle that if you are not in tune with the Word of God, it will be very disruptive to your family, to your life, to your marriage. So that was my video for today. Tell me what you think. Like, share, and subscribe. If you think, hey, I shouldn't have to lower my standard of living to be with a man, or he should have to consider me, I would strongly advise you to go back to the Bible, to the Word of God. And I would like to engage in dialogue with you. So leave your comments at the bottom of the video and like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks and have a great day.